Hey there, amazing souls. Welcome to our channel, where we bring you heartwarming stories that inspire and uplift. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button and join our incredible community. You won't want to miss what's coming next. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We love connecting with viewers from all around the world. Now sit back and get ready for a story that will touch your heart. The grocery store hummed with the sound of cartwheels clattering over tiles, faint pop music playing through the overhead speakers, and families exchanging lively chatter. Among the hustle, Barron Trump moved quietly through the aisles, a basket in hand. Dressed in a simple hoodie and jeans, he appeared as any other young man grabbing items for a quick meal. He paused occasionally to glance at his phone, checking a recipe before placing a few ingredients into his basket. The scene around him was ordinary, the kind of simplicity he had grown to appreciate. At the checkout line, a different story was unfolding. Claire, a young mother with 2 children in tow, stood anxiously before the cashier. Her cart held only the essentials: milk, bread, pasta, and a few cans of vegetables. Her children, a boy and a girl no older than 7, clung to her arms, their tired eyes scanning the snacks displayed nearby. Claire's face flushed as she rummaged through her purse, counting and recounting the cash she had. The cashier waited patiently, but the growing line behind her didn't share the same understanding. Customers shifted on their feet, exchanging impatient glances and muffled sighs. "I'm sorry," Claire stammered, her voice barely audible over the ambient noise. "I'll need to put some of these back." She handed a small stack of canned goods and a pack of cereal to the cashier, her hands trembling slightly. Her children watched silently, their small faces reflecting her discomfort. Barron, who had joined the line a few moments earlier, noticed the scene. He watched as Claire tried to maintain her composure, her eyes darting between her children and the items she reluctantly surrendered. The murmurs from the line behind her grew louder, adding to the weight of her embarrassment. Without hesitation, Barron stepped forward, leaving his basket behind. He approached the cashier and said quietly, "I'll take care of her bill." His voice was calm, steady, and free of hesitation. Claire turned, startled. "You don't have to do that," she began, her tone flustered but grateful. Barron offered a kind smile. "It's no trouble at all," he replied. "Everyone could use a little help sometimes." The cashier hesitated briefly before nodding, ringing up the remaining items as Barron pulled out his card. The murmurs in the line shifted from impatience to curiosity, and then to quiet admiration. Claire's eyes welled with tears as she tried to find the words to express her gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You have no idea what this means." Barron shook his head gently. "Take care of yourself and your kids," he said. "That's what matters." As Claire gathered her bags, Barron discreetly signaled a store employee to assist her, ensuring she wouldn't leave without enough to keep her family fed for weeks. The tension in the air lifted, replaced by an unspoken sense of awe. What had started as an ordinary shopping trip had transformed into a moment of kindness no one in that store would soon forget. As Claire stepped away from the counter, still clutching her receipt with trembling hands, her children tugged gently at her coat, sensing her mix of relief and gratitude. She turned to Barron, her voice breaking as she managed a quiet, "Thank you. I don't know how to repay you." Barron, standing a step back with his hands casually tucked into his pockets, gave her a reassuring smile. "There's nothing to repay," he said. "Just focus on yourself and your family. That's what matters." His tone was warm, unassuming, as though this gesture was the most natural thing in the world. Claire hesitated for a moment, still overwhelmed, before walking toward the exit with her children, her arms full of groceries she hadn't expected to afford. As she moved away, Barron noticed the small size of her cart compared to the items she'd left behind. Quietly, he approached a store employee and gestured toward the nearby aisles. "Can you help her pick out a few more essentials?" he asked in a low voice, making sure not to draw attention. "Make sure she leaves with enough for the week, and more." The employee nodded, touched by the quiet sincerity in Barron's request. "Of course," they replied, heading off to catch Claire before she exited the store. Barron watched as the employee gently spoke to her, guiding her back toward the aisles. Claire initially shook her head, overwhelmed, but after a moment of gentle insistence, she nodded, her expression a mix of disbelief and gratitude. Meanwhile, the scene at the checkout counter had shifted. Customers, who moments ago had murmured with impatience, now exchanged glances of admiration. Some whispered about the stranger who had stepped in so selflessly, wondering aloud who he was. Others reflected on their own responses, feeling a twinge of guilt for their earlier frustration. One woman, a few places back in line, leaned forward and said softly, "That was an incredibly kind thing you did." Barron gave her a polite nod but didn't linger on the praise. "Sometimes people just need a little extra support," he said simply, his voice free of pretense. Claire returned a few minutes later with her children, their cart now fuller than before. She paused by Barron, her voice trembling with emotion. "I don't have the words to thank you for this. It's more than I could have hoped for." Her children looked up at Barron with wide, curious eyes, as though they were seeing a miracle unfold. Barron knelt slightly to meet their gaze, offering a small smile. "Take care of your mom," he said to the kids, his tone gentle and warm. The little boy nodded solemnly, clutching his mother's hand tighter. As Claire and her family left the store, the atmosphere felt lighter, as though a ripple of kindness had softened the edges of a busy day. Barron returned to his basket, ready to finish his own shopping. But the moment stayed with everyone who had witnessed it. It wasn't just an act of generosity. It was a quiet reminder of the power of compassion. Later that evening, as Claire sat in her modest apartment with her children finally asleep, the reality of the day's events began to sink in. The kindness of the young man at the grocery store had left her deeply moved, and she couldn't shake the feeling that others needed to know about it. Grabbing her phone, she opened a social media app and began typing. Her words came easily, pouring out with heartfelt emotion as she described the moment. "A stranger stepped in today when I was at my lowest," she began. "He didn't judge, didn't hesitate. He just helped. He paid for my groceries, made sure my kids and I had enough to get through the week, and did it all with such humility. I don't know who he was, but his kindness reminded me that there are still good people in the world." Claire included a photo of her full cart, the receipt still tucked neatly inside, and hit post. She didn't think much of it, just a way to express her gratitude and share a moment of hope. But within hours, the post began to take on a life of its own. Comments flooded in, with people applauding the stranger's generosity and sharing their own stories of being helped by kind-hearted individuals. The likes and shares multiplied rapidly, and soon Claire's simple post had gone viral. The next day, as Claire scrolled through the hundreds of comments, one in particular caught her eye. "I think that's Barron Trump," someone had written, attaching a link to another post about his recent quiet visits to community centers and shelters. Claire's heart raced as she clicked the link and recognized the young man who had come to her rescue. She hadn't realized who he was at the time, but now it made sense. The calm confidence, the effortless generosity. The revelation only added fuel to the post's momentum. News outlets picked up the story, framing it as a rare glimpse into the humility and kindness of someone often shielded from public view. Headlines spoke of Barron's quiet gesture, emphasizing how his actions resonated far beyond the grocery store. As the story spread, something remarkable began to happen. Inspired by Barron's example, people across the country started sharing their own stories of helping strangers. Some paid for groceries for families in need. Others left anonymous donations at local shelters, and many volunteered their time at food banks and community kitchens. Social media lit up with hashtags like #KindnessRipple and #PayItForward, creating a wave of positivity in a world often overshadowed by negativity. Claire's simple act of gratitude had turned into a movement, fueled by one young man's humility. She watched as her story became a spark for countless others, proving that a single moment of kindness could ripple out to inspire millions. And though she never sought attention for herself, Claire felt a quiet pride knowing that her children would grow up in a world touched by that compassion. As the story of Barron's kind gesture continued to circulate, it sparked a chain reaction that neither he nor Claire could have anticipated. The attention Claire's post received opened a floodgate of generosity, with people from all walks of life reaching out to make a difference in their own ways. Food banks began seeing increased donations, families in need found unexpected support, and local organizations reported an influx of volunteers eager to contribute. The ripple effect was undeniable, and it all traced back to that quiet moment at the grocery store. Barron, however, remained characteristically modest about the attention. He avoided public commentary or interviews, choosing instead to focus on meaningful action. While the world buzzed about his generosity, Barron quietly contacted local food banks and community organizations asking what they needed most. Over the following weeks, shipments of food, clothing, and essential supplies began arriving at these centers, funded by his private donations. His actions were deliberate, targeted to provide immediate relief to families like Claire's, whose stories mirrored the challenges faced by so many others. Meanwhile, Claire found herself at the heart of a burgeoning movement in her community. Encouraged by the support she had received and the response to her post, she decided to take action herself. Reaching out to friends, neighbors, and even local businesses, Claire organized a food drive to benefit struggling families in the area. What started as a modest effort quickly grew into a large-scale initiative. Inspired by the story of Barron's kindness, the community rallied around her, donating canned goods, fresh produce, and household essentials in staggering quantities. The grocery store where the original encounter had taken place offered its parking lot as a central collection point. Volunteers of all ages showed up to sort and distribute the donations, creating an atmosphere of unity and purpose. Claire marveled at the sight of people coming together. Families, seniors, young professionals, all working side by side to make a difference. It was a testament to the power of a single act of kindness to ignite something far greater. Barron, though not present at the food drive, kept tabs on its success through quiet updates from the store manager and community leaders. The scale of the effort impressed even him, but he saw it not as a reflection of himself, but of the strength within the community. "This isn't about me," he remarked privately to a close confidant. "It's about what people can achieve when they support one another. I just happened to be in the right place at the right time." The food drive provided resources to dozens of families in need, some of whom, like Claire, had been struggling silently. It also fostered a renewed sense of community, reminding people that small actions, when combined, could lead to transformative change. What began as a moment of kindness at a checkout counter had grown into a network of support, proving that the ripples of compassion could extend far beyond their origin. Claire's determination, Barron's humility, and the community's generosity had created something truly lasting. Weeks later, the grocery store buzzed with a vibrant energy that was impossible to ignore. What was once a quiet space for families to do their shopping had transformed into a hub of generosity and unity. Tables overflowing with donated food, toiletries, and clothing lined the store's parking lot, while volunteers worked tirelessly to sort and distribute the supplies. Children carried small bags of canned goods with pride, and neighbors who might not have spoken much before now shared smiles and exchanged encouraging words. Barron Trump stepped out of his car, the hum of activity greeting him like a warm embrace. Dressed simply as always, he moved through the crowd with quiet curiosity, taking in the incredible scene. He hadn't returned for recognition or gratitude, but to see firsthand the impact of what had started as a single gesture of kindness. Walking toward the main collection point, he spotted Claire, surrounded by volunteers as she directed the day's efforts with calm determination. Claire saw him before he reached her, her face lighting up with a mixture of surprise and joy. She stepped forward, wiping her hands on her jeans, and approached him with an outstretched hand. "Barron," she said, her voice warm and steady, "I was hoping you'd come back. I don't think I could ever thank you enough for what you did that day." Barron shook her hand, his smile genuine. "You don't have to thank me," he said. "I didn't do this. You did. Look around. This is your doing, not mine." Claire glanced at the bustling scene around them, her eyes softening. "Maybe," she admitted, "but it wouldn't have happened without you stepping in that day. I was barely holding it together. You gave me the strength to believe things could get better." She paused, her voice catching slightly. "You didn't just help my family. You inspired this whole community." Barron looked around, taking in the sight of volunteers loading bags into cars, children helping sort donations, and strangers working side by side. "It's amazing what people can do when they come together," he said thoughtfully. "You took a moment of kindness and turned it into something incredible. That's the real magic." The two stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the fruits of Claire's determination and the community's generosity. As the sun began to dip lower in the sky, casting a warm glow over the bustling parking lot, Barron felt a sense of fulfillment that went beyond words. This wasn't about him. It was about people stepping up for one another, proving that even the smallest actions could inspire tremendous change. Before leaving, Barron spent time quietly helping the volunteers, blending seamlessly into the group. He didn't need recognition or fanfare. For him, the real reward was seeing the legacy of compassion grow. As he walked back to his car, the energy of the day stayed with him, a reminder of how a single act of kindness could create a ripple that reached far beyond its starting point. If this story inspired you, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more uplifting content. We'd love to hear your thoughts. What's the most heartwarming act of kindness you've ever witnessed? Share it in the comments below, and let's spread positivity together. Hit the bell icon to stay updated, and thank you for being part of our amazing community.